have Senator Bragg.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, recent research from Finder reveals that 42% of Australian mortgage holders are struggling to meet their home loan repayments in August, the highest level of mortgage stress in many years. The average owner-occupier mortgage now has risen to $634,000, a 9.3% increase from 2023. Meanwhile, yesterday's latest building activity data shows the government's housing agenda is making things worse. Between 2023 and 2024, home building commencements dropped 8.8% to the lowest level in a decade, with just 158,690 new starts. Minister, why is Labor's housing policy making a bad situation even worse?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I reject the assumption or the end of that question that it's making the situation worse at all. And I would say what's making the housing situation worse is not having agreement in this chamber around a range of policies that could be implemented to support both the construction of new housing, people from renting into housing, and supporting investments in other housing options. That's the handbrake. That's the block that's happening at the moment. We are doing everything we can as a government to ensure that the areas that the federal government has control over, that we are moving them all in the direction of additional supply of housing. We acknowledge that those who have mortgages are under stress. That's what happens when you have interest rate increases during a period of high inflation, which is why we've also been looking at ways to support people who are in that position with effective cost of living relief. But we have been putting in place agreements with the states and territories around housing and homelessness. We have got agreements with a social housing accelerator. We've put in $1 billion to help support enabling infrastructure, because local government tell us that that for them is a handbrake on getting more housing developed. We've got the states and territories agreeing to review their planning, essentially their planning requirements, again to accelerate the capability to get more housing supply in the system sooner. We've made announcements about the Housing Australia Future Fund. We've got Help to Buy, Build to Rent that are being stuck here. We've got the Home Owner Guarantee Scheme that's been very popular, that's supported over 100,000 into home ownership. So on every single level, on every measure you look at, we are doing what we can to increase the supply of housing in this country. It was not a problem that occurred overnight.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, can you confirm that to keep Labor's promise of 1.2 million new houses, one new house needs to be built every 2.2 minutes? Will Labor ever meet this target?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we are proud to have a housing target that includes the plan to build 1.2 million homes, and we have set that target, and we are putting the policies that to drive that target, to meet that target. Now, obviously, working with the states and territories is really important here, but also is training more tradies. Part of the issue that we've got is around workforce, funding more apprenticeships, growing that workforce, looking at how we can cut red tape, which is the work that we're doing with local government and planning reform, providing incentives to state governments to get homes built quickly, delivering the biggest investment in social housing in more than a decade, and working out with the states and territories on how to reduce homelessness. And I would just say to those opposite that this was a problem of a decade in the making because of the distinct lack of interest from those opposite in housing. You didn't even have a housing minister for a substantial period of time.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Order. Senators, yesterday was extremely disorderly when senators were attempting to ask their questions and when ministers were responding. I am going to go back to rulings of Senator Ryan and Senator Brockman that questions and answers be given and heard in silence. Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much, President. Under Labor, the prospect of owning your own house has become the preserve of the rich. Barrenjoey data shows that the share of Commonwealth Bank home loans for owner-occupiers earning more than $200,000 has doubled in the past few years. but the share going to borrowers on less than $100,000 has almost halved. Minister, won't your government's business-burdening industrial relations changes, green and red tape, make a bad situation even worse?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you.
Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Thank you very much for that question and for reminding us what the coalition would do if they were to win government again on the industrial relation front. They want to wind back workers' entitlements. They want to wind back wages growth. They want to make working in jobs, in construction and others more insecure, and we disagree with that. It will be a point of disagreement.
Senators, I asked for silence when senators were asking their question and when the minister was answering. That is what I expect. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. And so, in terms of the beginning of that question, I'm dealt with the IR component of that question. In terms of the first bit, why would we have invested in the social housing accelerator? Why would we be investing in Housing Australia Future Fund? Why would we be
Minister, Senator Bragg, which part of my statement did you fail to understand, particularly when the Senate was silent when your question was asked? You are being disrespectful to me and to this chamber. Minister, please continue.
I couldn't disagree stronger with Senator Bragg on the fact that our policies are only around housing for the rich. Social Housing Accelerator, Housing Australia Future Fund, Commonwealth Rent Assistance. We are about housing for all, housing for everybody.
Minister, the time for answering has